Tonight, controversy over NCA's decision to shut down two NDC affiliated radio stations, Radio Gold and XYZ. The party says it's part of a grand government agenda to frustrate the party.
Government is calling for civil disobedience. It is quite obvious that government is calling for some level of disorder in this country. I don't think that any government can thrive under such circumstance. This country needs peace to make progress.
There is an emergency press conference that is set to begin shortly, addressed by the NCA as the NDC address a news conference at which they declared that no NDC member, including former government appointees, will henceforth cooperate with the police or any other security agency as far as any investigation is concerned. I want to stay with us as this unfolds in a very swift manner. Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passions. Also brought to you by Gas and Cement, the Nation Builder, Vodafone. The future is exciting, ready, and also brought to you by Nationwide Health Insurance, your healthcare family. The last few hours, armed police officers led by officials from the National Communications Authority stormed the premises of Radio Gold and XYZ radio stations, both affiliated with the National Democratic Congress. This happened while the NDC was holding a news conference to address the invitation that they believed to be malicious, directed at its national chairman from the CID, at which he announced that the national chairman will not cooperate with the police, and also no NDC former appointee will also cooperate with the police or any other investigation conducted by any state agency. Now, while that police and NCA action was happening, we're now learning that an emergency press conference has now been called by the NCA to explain why the two stations have been shut down. And I'm sure you would have noticed by now, if you tune into Radio Gold and XYZ, they've been off for a while. We've been speaking to management of XYZ about what has happened, as well as Radio Gold. Will go live to both premises shortly. And we'll also bring to you that live news conference, emergency press conference called by the NCA shortly here on Top Story. But I want to, the NCA has already issued a statement on the action they're taking tonight. But first, listen to the managing news editor at XYZ, Erica Hianyo, who has been detailing what happened today when armed police officers led by officials from the NCA stormed their premises.
This afternoon, we were taking an event live from the NDC headquarters, and officials of the DNI, National Communications Authority, and some armed policemen, about 8 or 9 of them, including a lady, well armed, stormed the premises. Some of them stood or took positions behind our wall before that the access to the main building. A few of them took positions within the forecourt of the reception. Others were positioned in the yard, and one of them followed the NCA officials, including some engineers. There was a lawyer among them who led the team. They asked for permission to see our directors. I made myself available, and our chief operating officer, Benanti. And so when we met them, we asked why they had stormed our premises with such well-armed to the street officers. And they said they had brought a letter. It was very simple. They wouldn't say anything. They only wanted to serve us the letter so we could open and read the details. Now, the letter before me currently is headlined Expiration of FM Radio Frequency Authorization page. And so they are saying that since then, we have not renewed our license. Prior to this, we had made several applications, at least 2 or 3 applications to NCA that we want to renew our licenses based on the experience we had with the surprise bills that some of us were owing 4 million, 10 million, 40 million, and so on. We have also sent to NCA 2 bank grants, which were rejected because they told us they will get back to us, and these bank drafts were to cover the renewal of licenses.
What you're suggesting is that you sought to regularize your situation, but you didn't get feedback from the NCA on this matter. But I think that does not change the fact that you were operating without a license. Am I right? That is something you concede. Is that correct?
Yes. So because we're a business entity in operation,
without a license,
there was a ruling, and the ruling said all the affected media houses, let's cash how much they were owing them, and let them renew their licenses as if they were starting afresh.
Yes.
It's like you are starting from a fresh page.
That's right.
So you make a requisition for that process to be finalized. And so you make the letters available to NCA, and then you make available to NCA all the statutory requirements they expect from you. And this one was received by NCA, and they have their stamp in one of the documents before me as is it 28th July 2017 as received from the NCA. And that photocopy is before me as we speak. So the NCA has acknowledged our requisition for what must be done, the right thing that must be done.
Much as you have made efforts to regularize your situation, you have not actually received the license required in order for you to operate legally.
NCA has not carried out its side of our expectations because we made the requisition. And obviously, we can't force certificates onto ourselves.
And we'll be crossing over to the Information Ministry shortly, where the press conference by the NCA is set to get underway anytime soon. They have a statement out tonight already. I'll be sharing with you. But I want to go to the premises of Radio Gold right now because my colleague, Parker Wilson, is there for us. And as you can imagine, a number of NDC sympathizers have thronged the station in solidarity with the station. Parker, what can you report? Hello, Parker.
Hello, Ivan.
What can you report?
Well, so, Ivan, I can report that scores of NDC supporters are still at the premises of Radio Gold here at Lakabia Koshi. Just a while ago, the security officials or the policemen who were here just left. Now, I spoke to the district commander of Mamfobi in the person of Sevasasa, who tells me that the police who were here were not part of the those who accompany the NCA to come to Radio Gold, but for them, they picked up information that there was a need for the police to protect or provide protection to personnel or staff of Radio Gold, and that is why they came here. So they left about 20 or 10 minutes ago. Now, what is happening here is that the supporters are not too happy with the fact that NCA came to shut down the station. And some officials of the NDC, from Aside or Sylvester Mesa, who attempted to be the flag bearer of the party, also visited the premises of Radio Gold. Now, he tells me that what NCA did clearly has political connotation.
You just came to Radio Gold. One would want to find out from you, why are you here this afternoon, sir?
Well, a couple of reasons. I was a little away from the center, and I was reading on social media a number of happenings. One was the closure of several radio stations that are perceived to be stations associated with the National Democratic Congress. And clearly you could see that there's a clear difference between legitimate enforcement of regulation and politically motivated enforcement of regulation. And we could see clearly that it cannot be a coincidence that our party elders, the National Executive Committee and the elders of the party, were having a press conference. And right at the time that the press conference was to be aired, all our radio stations were shut down. This is an interesting coincidence.
No, I'm sure they're doing their work. Well, they say that the Radio Gold and XYZ were operating without unauthorized license.
It's a very interesting coincidence. I think that Ghana has come very far. We have enjoyed some peace in this country. It is quite obvious that government is calling for civil disobedience. It is quite obvious that government is calling for some level of disorder in this country. I don't think that any government can thrive under such circumstances. This country needs peace to make progress. And if this is just the beginning of what to expect as we move into 2020, then I think that the NDC would have to brace itself up for it. We saw what happened at Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election, and if that had gone unattended to, one could imagine what the preparations towards 2020 would be. This is yet another manifestation of what is in store for politics in this country. It's unfortunate.
No, I'm quite curious.
This is not the Ghana. This is not the Ghana that we want to live in. This is not the Ghana we would want to be associated with. This is not the politics that anyone should be proud of. Every member of every party, whether in government or in opposition, must pray that a government in power succeeds. It is important that every government in power succeeds. And whether you're in opposition or not, it must be your prayer that a government must succeed. If you're in opposition, the expectation is that, yes, you pray that the government succeeds, but you put up a program that is higher, that can provide accelerated development, faster and better than the incumbent government as a basis for snatching political power. That is the kind of politics we envisage into the future, but not this type of politics.
No, but I'm a bit curious because NCA has carried out
this
a
is
mandate.
simply not on.
Radio Gold XYZ
you are a journalist.
operating
You are a
without
journalist.
license,
You are a journalist.
and you say that you don't want them to shut them down because of politically motivated action.
The coincidence is very interesting. I'm sure you are enjoying. You are enjoying.
You don't
that
have the full
interest.
facts. I mean, you don't have the full facts. Maybe
Well,
perhaps they have
let me
started their
say-
work months before today.
Let me say that Ghanaians are wide awake. Let me say that every single Ghanaian would put interpretation to what is happening.
And for you,
the
it's politically motivated.
And the interesting coincidence is what makes the whole thing a little absurd. It's quite absurd, my brother. This is not the politics that Ghana deserves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I want to stay at the premises of Radio Go right now, where Parker Wilson is still on standby. Parker, explain to me. I know you've been speaking to the Radio Go management. Did they tell you if the NCA officials who came to the premises today to shut them down, explain to them why they were shutting them down?
To the programs manager, and he was clear that letter dated the 8th of May, according to him, was given to him today, that they are instructing them or directing them to shut down Radio Go because they are operating without license. And for him, he was a bit surprised because prior to today, there hasn't been any correspondence between Radio Gold, management of Radio Gold, and NCA. So if perhaps you want to carry out or execute what you call those operations, you have to give them prior notice. But in this case, they're not giving any prior notice. Of course, they were also surprised, according to the programs manager, that NCA came to the premises with armed policemen. And they were questioning why NCA would come to the premises of Radio Gold with armed policemen. Well, he says that they walked into their technical room, the NCA official walked into their technical room, and then ordered the technicians to shut down the station upon receipt of the letter. Even at the time, they didn't know the content of the letter. So until they left, until NCA and the police personnel left the premises of Radio Go, that was when they decided to open the letter and read the content of the letter, which indicated that they are operating without license. And that is why NCA is shutting them down. And so what we are saying is that management have been in a series of meetings, and they are still going to meet to look at how they are going to engage NCA so that they bring the station back on air.
And that is some clarity that we're also getting now from the NCA. We are waiting their press conference, which we understand will be addressed jointly by the NCA and the Communications Ministry, the Information Ministry right now. And you had there Sylvester Mensah, who recently was a flag bearer aspirant and had contested John Dramani Mahama and lost, indicate that the coincidence and that this is part of a grand scheme, etc., to, I guess, intimidate but also frustrate the NDC. And this had happened today, whilst there was a press conference ongoing by the NDC to announce the decision to withdraw all forms of cooperation with state agencies who seek to investigate and may need the assistance of former government appointees under the former, NDC administration. They were announcing that whilst this action was happening, and also on the back of for some purpose invitation yesterday, in which he was named as a suspect in the several kidnappings and also the fire outbreaks across the country. That's the context within which the NDC is interpreting this as witch hunting and an attempt to frustrate them. But there is an official explanation from the National Communications Authority why the decision was taken to shut down at least those two stations that we know now. And we probably will get further clarity from the press conference. But Joseph, the NCAA statement, what does it say? Does it give us any clarity on what the basis is for the decision?
They say it's in conformity with a directive that had come from the Electronic Communications Tribunal when it comes to the operation of various radio stations. And from the statement, they indicate that there was an audit of various radio stations that was done in 2017. And as a result of the audit, they found some of the radio stations to be in default when it comes to the licensing, and they were fined by the authority. So some of the radio stations then proceeded to court, and they went to the Electronic Communications Tribunal, and some also went to the High Court seeking to reverse the National Communications Authority's decision. Now, this resulted in a decision by the Electronic Communications Tribunal in 2018, which reviewed the status of various radio stations that had their licenses expiring and ruled, among others, that companies whose authorizations had expired, had to revert to the same position as the applicant. And while some stations were shut down following this decision, others were not shut down. So in simple terms, there was a situation where the authority actually went ahead to find some radio stations. They went to court and the Electronic Communications Tribunal. The tribunal, according to the NCA, ruled against these said radio stations. So now they are enforcing the decision that they had taken earlier.
And those who had licenses on the back of the ruling had to renew their license.
So they quote the Electronic Communications Regulations, that's specific regulation 65, to actually make that point about the renewal of license. And they explain that a person shall not use a radio frequency without authorization from the National Communications Authority. And, that's what they are seeking to enforce with the shutdown of those who are operating without licenses. And so they say that it should be noted that as the Electronic Communications Tribunal had ruled, submission of renewal application after expiry of authorization is not a valid application and therefore shall not be considered by the authority. The fact that I've put in an application doesn't mean...
So that confirms XYZ's position.
Which Erica Hanyo had expressed. That they had made the attempts to go ahead and do the necessary renewal of their license, but the NCA had not accepted the checks and the bankers draft that they had submitted and all. And the statement goes on to make the point that whilst companies which were affected by the shutdown may submit fresh applications to the authority if they so wish, these applications shall go through the required procedure for new FM broadcasting authorization, and the outcome will be communicated to the applicant, and that the public should be informed that entities, are only authorized to use the frequencies for a specific duration or period, and that frequencies are national assets and not the properties of those that it's been assigned to in perpetuity.
So I guess the question to ask is, does this only affect XYZ and Radio Gold? Because so far, those are the only two radio stations we know have been shut down as a result of this ruling and the enforcement of the laws by the NCA. And we're waiting for that news conference that will clarify that for us, if there are other radio stations that may be affected. But thankfully, we can get maybe some clarity on this from the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. Andy Ahinkra is the president and joins us on the line right now. Andy, thank you for your time here on Top Story. I think we've lost him on the line. We'll try and get him back and get some clarity what they know about this already, and whether they've been contacted by NCA in enforcing this particular rule and ruling from the tribunal that what happened last year. We can speak to Andy, who is joining us on the telephone line right now. Andy, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you also for having me.
Yes. So, has this shutdown of, and I'm guessing that XYZ and Radio Gold are your members?
Well, XYZ, yes, and Radio Gold are members of GIBA.
Yeah. So have you been what have you been told officially about the decision to shut them down?
Well, the NCA has issued a letter to them. We've been in touch with them, and they have told us they've shared the letter with us. And the NCA seem to be quoting some rules from the Electronic Communication Tribunal as the basis for what they're doing. This has not started in Accra. It has started in some other places where they have approached the NCA, and they've had to go through the process of getting their licenses, as it were, in place in order. I believe that it opens the way for these affected radio stations to sit with the NCA and go through the process. Unfortunately, what we are hearing from some of our members is that the process is unduly delaying, where they have made the applications for some time and they've not had any response from the NCA. It's only fair that we are giving the opportunity, because you see, again, the ECT in their ruling did not only say that those companies, you see, the point is this, the bone of contention, what went to the tribunal was the imposition of fines on those companies and the status of the companies as at the time the imposition was applied. And it was in that ruling, in that sense of fairness, that the ECT says that, listen, if you are saying their license had expired, then what business did you have with them that you have to impose a fine? I think I would not want to muddy the waters at the moment. We, especially GIBA, we believe in the cordial relation we have enjoyed with the NCA from time immemorial. And our decision has always been that we will maintain that particular cordial relationship, irrespective of what regime is in place. We believe in dialogue. We believe in sitting down and agreeing for mutual benefit. And so, therefore, we would plead and we will continue to speak with authorities and to say that they should let fairness prevail. They should open their doors, and what needs to be done properly and right, in all fairness, should be done.
And you've used the word fairness twice in the last few seconds. Are you suggesting that the decision taken by the NCA may not be fair?
It's always been harsh, in my opinion. We have said that this is a statement, official statement and official position of GIBA, that the NCA in recent times are applying very harsh methods in getting people to comply with what they are supposed to do. In fact, in some aspects of the ruling of the ECT said that there are milder means of getting compliance, soliciting compliance from those who default, and which the NCA could apply, but they have not done so, and they have chosen the harsher means to do that, which, of course, in that particular instance failed. We believe that there are ways NCA can get us all back. You see, again, the issue is that the relationship also can be relied on to get people to comply. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure anybody is criminal in that sense of the word, i.e. where we would operate illegal radio stations in the country. But then when you give the people the opportunity, especially in terms of reminders, in this particular case, I'm not sure even any communication had gone on since the time of...
But Andy, if you don't have a license, you don't have a license. The law says you cannot operate. As simple as that. I mean, Radio Gold XYZ tells us, yes, we don't have a license, and we have tried since 2017, and we don't get it.
Are you suggesting by this that Radio Gold never had a license?
No, I mean, from what the NCA says in your letter, the ruling says that the renewal of the law, a person shall not use a radio frequency without authorization from authority, and that from the ruling that you cited, the tribunal, your licenses had to be applied afresh.
Evans, we can quote laws and quote whatever we want to quote to support whatever we want to do. But I use the word fairness in the sense of really sitting down to look at what we have done in the past. Are you saying that these radio stations never had licenses? They had licenses which had expired, and they have to renew the licenses. In the course of renewal, if the NCA delays in issuing the license, will they still have license? So these are questions which we have to ask. I don't think we need to go through all this. The NCA knows what is happening at their end, and we know what is happening at their end. The fact of the matter is that if you apply for a license today, it is not going to take one day for you to get it. And you cannot say who is getting license at what time the person is going to get a license. In fact, is the NCA been responding to letters that people are writing? Have they replied to letters, etc., etc.? We don't want to go into all of this. But the point is that we believe in sitting down and talking to each other and giving us the equal opportunity that we all have enjoyed in the past, that we are able to continue with our business. Nobody is a criminal. Nobody is interested in doing criminal activities in the country. And therefore, none of these radio stations are involved in criminal activities in the country. And therefore, if their license have expired and they have the opportunity of renewing their license, and if the NCA wish to do it very quickly for them, they could do it for them. We are not saying that the NCA should bend the rule or anything of the sort, but these are businesses that employ Ghanaians. These are businesses that employ people.
A final question to you, just for clarity. Do you know if, because so far we've only heard XYZ and Radio Gold having been shut down, do you know if other stations have been shut down as a result of this?
I am aware of stations being shut down or threat of stations being shut down in other places. I am aware of some stations which have been shut down who have been allowed to renew, go through the process and get their documents.
You mean stations in Accra or outside Accra?
Some of them are outside Accra. I can't think of any in Accra yet.
Okay, so what you're saying is that, and clarify that, as far as Accra is concerned, XYZ and Radio Gold are the only ones for now.
That is what has come to our notice at the moment.
I'm grateful that you joined us with that clarity. We'll get some more from the press conference. Let's go there now. Let's go to the Information Ministry now, because my colleague Komla Dome is there for us watching that press conference. Komla, do you have an indication if the press conference has started yet and what they may be talking about and who may be addressing it? We've lost Komla there. We'll try and get him back. But we'll bring you that press conference if it gets underway. Well, let's get some clarity from my reporter who's on the ground, just so that we know what we're dealing with as far as the press conference is concerned. Komla, do we know when this press conference is starting, what we'll be talking about, and who will be addressing it?
Well, Evans, the press conference hasn't started yet, but we are getting indication that in the next couple of minutes, the press conference is expected to start. I have just seen the boss of the NCA walk in. We are expecting a few officials from the Communications Ministry. As and when they join the team from the NCA, we understand this press conference is going to start in a short while. We're also getting some indication that they're going to be rolling out or laying out some more measures that they're going to be taking to clamp down on some of these radio stations whom they say have breached some of the laws. For example, their licenses have expired, etc. And they will roll out that a plan to deal with them on their merit. Each of the stations will have to be dealt with their merits, exactly. So we understand the NCA officials are going to be addressing this press conference, which is built to start in the next, say, 10 to 15 minutes, Evan.
Well, thank you very much. You want to stay with us for that because we bring you live that press conference. Stay with us because on Newsnight in a short while, complete and total withdrawal of cooperation from the NDC in all police investigations involving former government appointees as the party fights off what they claim to be government-sanctioned police tyranny. Details of that shortly on Newsnight.